If I can use technology to free up my time, then that means I have more time to personally connect with people, which is all about sales enablement, right? Just getting you down the road, getting right down that road faster. Using technology to save you time creates an opportunity for people to know, like, and trust you because you have time for them. And that's the one thing that is so precious in this world today is that nobody has time. And if we can make time for a client, then they're going to, or a prospect, they're going to feel that. They're not going to feel like you're rushing to move on to the next thing and that you're just a number to them.
Karen Gunther has spent 25 years as a professional business development manager and brings to Stay Visible Marketing the mindset of a salesperson who understands how to easily and effectively market a product or service to an identified audience. She recently expanded her offerings to include individualized sales training to help salespeople tap into using technology to speed up sales enablement. And Karen has taught me quite a few new tricks. Honestly, right before we hit record, I learned 2 new things from Karen. So I'm really excited to have her on the show. And we're going to talk about today is around technology, but in a lot of ways, it's about level setting and getting us back to basics. So using technology as a foundation to help support our foundational skills, which in turn increases our productivity and our sales numbers. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Karen, welcome to Prospecting on Purpose.
Super excited to be here, Sarah.
Well, and I wanted to start with an icebreaker because you are a technology guru, but I want to just know, what is your favorite app on your cell phone?
You will be surprised to know it is the voice memo.
Oh, how do you use it?
And when it comes to sales and business, it's a great way to know how things are coming out of your mouth. So let's say you want to practice a new voicemail message that you're leaving, or you want to practice a pitch. You can use the voice memo you can read something aloud, you can say something aloud, but when you push the button on the voice memo, it kind of puts your brain in a whole new frame, like you're actually talking to somebody because you know you're going to be able to hear it again. And then you can go back and listen to it and say, that sounded good, but the words didn't feel right coming out of my mouth. So I'm going to change the words a little. And it's a great way to practice as a sales rep how to do things without having to practice on prospects.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that answer, Karen. And it just like, I just know you're not going to disappoint because every time I always have these little like baby aha moments every time we talk. And I think one of the things that you and I have talked about, and the first question I want to pose to you is, and just to be clear, audience, we're not getting into artificial intelligence suites. We're talking about just regular technology and software applications we should be using. So I want to ask you, Karen, like, why is this a problem? What do you see in your work that this is lack of technology awareness is becoming a problem?
Well, the way I look at it is this, is that there's a human resources department in a company, right? And that's because we're all humans and we are the resource, right? And the word human means we have strengths and we have weaknesses. And salespeople are people, so surprisingly, and some are good with tech and others are not. And if you're the type that isn't good with tech, you might feel like you're falling behind or you're not keeping up, and it affects your confidence when you're going and doing your sales prospect. Or if you're not good at tech and you just don't care and you're like, forget it, I'm not even going to think about it, I'm just going to forget that it exists, then your process becomes longer because you're taking too much time to do things that can be done faster if you were to use some simple technology tools. So as a salesperson, you really need to take a look at technology and say, how can this support my strengths? And how can this stabilize my weaknesses so they don't impact my career?
Wow. Okay, that was such a great answer. And I think there were two big like takeaways that I found. One is the idea of the human resources side of it. Because I remember when we went in a pandemic lockdown, I had some colleagues that had, couldn't share a screen and you could tell it was impacting their confidence. So that's the other piece that I think is really interesting about lack of confidence.
And I had an example for you
Yeah,
about that,
tell me,
actually, because
please.
in case you wanted an example, I just had one this morning, actually. I was working with a prospect who's going to hopefully be signing on here shortly. And he needed to share his screen so I could see, some of the work I was going to be doing with him. He has a Mac. When you're As soon as he started having the problem saying, I realized he couldn't share a screen, I immediately asked, do you have a Mac? And he said, yes, I do. I said, okay, this is what you need to do. I don't have a Mac. I don't work in the Mac space. I quickly Googled how to, enable screen sharing within a Mac, because on a Mac, you have to have it set up in your privacy and security settings. And you
Mm,
have to allow Zoom to be able to share your microphone, your camera, your screen in like 4 or 5 different spots. You have to check and uncheck things. And we spent 5 minutes, and he had to come in and out of the meeting several times before we could get to the part where we were talking about what we needed to talk about. And something as simple as that slows the process down.
right.
I don't think any less of him. He's very wise when it comes to technology stuff. He just has a Mac.
Right.
So things that you can do in advance to remove those speed bumps are really good things to pay attention to.
Right. So you're not doing it in front of a client or in front of your boss or in front of your team you're leading. And it's not an age thing either, because I know,
No.
Karen, the first time you and I met, wanted to share your screen and I didn't have my Zoom enabled. And you're like, just do this, this, and this. And so now that's my setting. And I get to skip that step every time someone I'm meeting with wants to share my screen. So I like these little examples because I feel like they're very tangible. And we all have these areas where we just stumble. And sometimes it's just finding how to fix it without, like, just what's the word I'm looking for? Banging your head against the wall, really.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but something that people can do as a goal is just recognize something I call them speed bumps.
Mm.
Recognize a speed bump that's happening, like you with the Zoom screen share, with him
Mhm.
with the screen share, that is creating a problem, and just set aside time each week just to solve one of those speed bumps.
Mm.
Sometimes it takes 3 minutes, sometimes it takes 30 minutes, sometimes you have to have the tech people involved. For example, for me, I have a really nice microphone, and I have the dumb microphone on my, webcam, right? Well, for whatever reason, last week, my microphone and camera were going crazy and really wonky and not working. And I'm like, goodness, I have this time with Sarah today. I need to make sure that my microphone works. So last night, I spent a half an hour. I reran all the cords, all the cables. I got on a Zoom with somebody. I tested it out to make sure that it worked so that I was ready for our meeting today,
Well, your
because it was
audio
important
sounds
for me to have it work properly.
yeah, your audio sounds beautiful. So thank you for that. And I love the idea of looking at the speed bumps because as you said that, I just thought, okay, yeah, I've been doing 3 different apps for my calendar because I haven't synced my calendar. Like there's all these little speed bumps is a great word for it that I like the idea of carving out time for tech. I've never thought about that, like time blocking for your tech troubleshooting.
Yeah, just one a week, just one little one a week, and you'd be surprised at how much easier life becomes.
Okay, I love that. And so let's just talk about from the lens of a sales professional. And obviously this can apply to anyone, but let's use sales individuals as our metric here. Let's just talk about essential skills for sales professionals to effectively use technology in their roles.
Essential skills would be to be organized, whatever that means for you. Everybody has a different way of organizing items. Everybody has a different way of organizing their time, their files, their emails, whatever it is, find a way that works for you. And one quick tip that you can do is, let's say you use your phone and you're in the field and you use it for business purpose. That's where you have your LinkedIn, that's where you have your Outlook, that's where you have, whatever CRM solution your company requires of you or you have for your own company. Have all of that in one folder on your phone and have it on your homepage. So that way you're not swiping to get to the app. You can swipe all you want for your personal apps. You know where they are. You know how to get to those quickly. But for business purpose, you want things to be as easy as possible because you want to spend as less time as possible so you can spend more time on personal pursuits. So just be organized. So one way to do that would be to create a little folder, put it on the homepage of your phone, and just put all your business apps right in that folder, one click away. Another thing would be a skill specifically would be to get into a consistent habit for education. As a salesperson, you're responsible for educating yourself. What can help you? And the essential skills would be to listen to podcasts like this,
Mhm.
Prospecting on Purpose,
Holler.
watching YouTubes, listening to audiobooks to keep up. There's a lot of different ways to keep up, and there's a lot of different ways you can do it. One way to do it is called habit stacking.
Mm.
So when I'm working out in the morning, I will throw a podcast on in my ear and I'll be listening to that while I'm working out. So I'm not spending additional time, but I'm spending time that I already have earmarks for that's something that's already part of my schedule and adding on that habit of education. And if you do that once or twice a week, you will keep your skills up and you'll be hearing what other people are doing. And even if it's repetitive or things that you're already doing, it'll make you feel good that you're already doing it. Or you're going to hear it a little differently. And it's a way for you to just adjust a little bit what you're doing in order to make it work better for you. And the last skill that I would suggest is to acknowledge who you are. And
Mhm.
that's probably one of the hardest ones. That's why I would probably say this one last. You have strengths and you have weaknesses, just like we talked about. And you need to understand how to support those strengths and make it amazing. If you're really good in the field and you're really good in front of the client and you're really good, you're a good talker and you can really understand the client and you're able to connect with them, but you're really, really bad about getting stuff into your CRM like you're supposed to.
That was me. Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Then what you need to do is you either need to have a buddy that will do it for you, either get an assistant to do it for you or find somebody to do it for you, or you need to find a way to use tech to make it easier, such as putting it on your phone, the CRM on your phone, and hitting talk to text. And just as soon as you get out, just while you're in the parking lot, talk to your phone and get all the information in there so that you can move on and do the parts that you do well.
I love those 3 tips. I want to go through them again real quick. So organize whatever that means for you. And you know what, Karen, you might like kick me when we meet in person one day, but sometimes I would save my files where I thought future Sarah would look for them. I know she's shaking her head.
Nope. I
So
can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning.
I'm like, where will I look for this in the future? So I've gotten much better at my organization on both in all of those things, time management, files, and emails. I really appreciated your comment about having a consistent habit for education because we all in all of our roles work with a lot of different people in a lot of different roles. And I can look at the people that I think are rock stars and the people that maybe think they're rock stars and could use a little finessing. And they're the ones that will, tell me, and I can say this because they've told me they don't listen to podcasts. It's almost like the arrogance is so high that that's driving their sales. It's like, no, no, no. That
Right,
shines through when you talk to people. So I
right.
appreciated that comment because we all need to read and find ways that, I mean, there's limitless resources. So thank you for that. And then acknowledge who you are. Wow. That was like just holding up a mirror, but that's okay. Because if I'm, for example, I was really bad at percentage math. And if you're a sales manager, percentages are a part of your daily life. And so I just got really good at like bookmarking my percentage calculator app. I knew how to do the calculations on my computer, so I do them kind of sneaky, but like I could not do mental percentages. So I appreciate you giving those kind of guardrails for us. I thought that was great. So let me ask you, I loved the example of you're out in the field and you put a folder on your phone on your home screen. What are some other like bare minimum technology tips you can share with us?
I would start with Zoom or Teams, and it's different on whatever platform that you use or whatever platform your company uses. I shared the example of the Mac creating the problem with the screen share. That's just an inherent thing. Other things that you can do on Zoom to make your life easier is to have a set meeting that's not time bound. It's something easy that you can put into an email signature and send to people quickly. If you want to meet with them, it's very quick. You don't have to create a meeting, copy the code, have the password. You just set it up in advance on your Zoom or and you can also do it on Teams because I've done it on Teams and send the person a link quickly. In addition to that, you want to make sure your settings in Zoom are set so that others can screen share so that they don't have that problem. And
Guilty.
I also like to make it so that somebody enters a waiting room and then they don't have to have a password
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
because I try to think of if your 90-year-old grandmother is trying to access Zoom, what's the easiest way for her to do that? Well, that's what you want to do for your prospects and clients
Right.
and anybody else that you might be meeting with. I've been doing Zooms with my parents and their friends, and so far, the person that did the best Zoom so far was a 95-year-old.
Really? Oh my
And I've
gosh.
had people from all ages.
Well, it's funny too, because even something as simple as I know that these are like silly little examples, but it's almost like we're talking about speed bumps for us and our own technology skills. where can we eliminate obstacles or speed bumps for our clients to work with us? Because if
Right.
it's super easy to talk to our competitor, Jerry, versus me making someone jump through 3 hoops just to have a Zoom call, like little
Right.
things might steer them towards somebody who's easy
Right.
to work with.
If you're easy to work with, they'll wanna work with you.
Right. I
And
love
that goes right into, I mean, you wanna make sure that you have a background set up or use a live background that looks great. You wanna make sure all one day you go and you figure out all your Zoom stuff or your virtual platform stuff, and you wanna make sure that you're watching videos, and there was a great video that happened at the beginning of the pandemic where a newscaster explained how to set up a good virtual space at home. Literally using books to put under your laptop so that the camera is eye level with you as opposed to being, set back.
chin
Right.
shots.
Exactly,
Looking up our
exactly. So
nostrils.
simple things like that. And you touched on make it easy for clients. Another thing that makes it super easy for clients is, are you using Outlook email signatures to your best advantage?
Talk
Now,
to us about that.
when you have an email signature, I see people that have a text, it was or excuse me, an image. Some people use an image that has their headshot and their, data information, but what happens is people can't click on that to call you.
Right.
They can't click on that to email you, and sometimes it doesn't even come through because their email system is set up to not allow for images to download, so they don't even see it. So you wanna make sure just at a base level that you have basic things in your signature, that you have your name, your position, your company name, your company website, your email address, your phone number, your cell phone, if you're willing to provide it. And what I also do is I provide a calendar link so people can set themselves up on my calendar. And I've actually had people just set themselves up on my calendar, and
Oh,
I don't even know who they are.
yeah. I'm gonna do that. That's a great idea.
And so that way I just make it as or if I'm talking to somebody and I'm sending them an email, they say, "Oh yeah, let's get together." I said, "Okay, great. Go ahead. Sounds great. Let's do that. Go ahead and use the link in my signature below." Boom. And
Yeah.
it's already there. It's just static part of, and if you want to add your headshot, you can. That would be the image that you could add. But the important stuff is there because if somebody's on their mobile and they want to call you, they're just going to hit the phone number. And if it doesn't work, they're going to be annoyed.
Yeah. Every time I would see a peer that didn't have their phone number in a sales role, obviously I know it's not in every role
I
applicable.
believe in every role, any client or employee facing role, which is every role in a company,
Yeah.
should have a set signature that's required so that business can happen quickly.
Yes, I love that. And just how are people supposed to call you with their money if they can't find your phone number? Like they're going to call Jerry, our
Right.
competitor. And another little piece on that too is if people have extensions, that kills me. People have just their extension number. It's like, well, I am an outside employee. How do I call you? It's
Right. And you also want to make sure that your reply that so email so Outlook, I speak to Outlook just because that's what most companies use. They give you the opportunity to make as many signatures as you want, and those signatures could be used as email templates. Maybe we'll talk about that later, but you can set what signature you want to have be attached to that email. So the email that your primary signature could be the big one with all the information on it. But you can also set a reply signature that has maybe half the information on it, but just your phone, your email address. And you would say to me, Karen, why would you give them your email address in your signature? They're emailing you. Because what if they wanted to forward your information to
Mhm.
somebody else? What if they just want to click the button and start a fresh email?
Right. Or just
Make it
screenshot it and send
easy.
it. Yeah, that's a great point. Because I don't know if I do that or not. I have to think about it. But I don't think historically I've put my email in my email signature, but I'm in the short one. But I love that idea. Okay, what
Yeah.
else can you tell us? Let's keep going. We're getting all the goodies.
You mentioned something about your calendars, and your calendar must sync across all devices.
Mhm.
When I started my company back in 2012, in 2015, 2014, 2015 timeframe, I believe it was, Google stopped having their Google Calendar connect to Outlook, to the Microsoft product. And all of a sudden, I started missing meetings and I couldn't understand what was going on because I kept setting meetings, but they weren't making it to all of my devices. So I ended up not being able to show up to places where I need to show up to places. So I made a decision back then, and I've been delighted with it since, where I chose one platform. I chose the Microsoft platform to move my email to that. And I'm not here to say that you need to sell your soul to Microsoft the same way I have. But there's reasons I do that as a small business owner specifically, that I do that support through them. But more importantly, because I've done that and because I have my email address in a centralized location with a large company, I'm now able to sync my calendar across every single device I have. So it doesn't matter what device. I have 2 iPads, a phone, and a computer, and a laptop. And on every single yes, I did say I had 2 iPads.
Okay.
They serve 2 different functions, which is cracks me up, but tech is here to serve me, and that's something I do wanna say.
Okay.
Tech is here to serve us. If you're frustrated by tech and it's not doing what you want it to do, then you're serving it. You need
Mhm.
to turn the tables and it needs to serve you. So I have 2 different iPads for 2 different uses. And every single calendar has the exact same information on it so that I can know where I'm supposed to be, who I'm supposed to be talking to, or I can make plans for the future.
And you probably have multiple calendars feeding in.
No, actually, I don't. I just because I have my own business, I just use my professional calendar
Okay.
for sales reps out there that work for other companies. I would not put anything personal on your professional calendar. I counsel the salespeople I work with to always have a personal email address and always separate their personal from their professional every single step of the way.
That's good.
And so if you want to do that, you can. There are ways to have it set up so that you can see both calendars on your devices as well.
Okay, because I'm thinking about
Absolutely.
our booking link, what we were talking about, and what a brilliant piece of technology the calendar booking link is to just
Mhm.
instead of the back and forth 95 times and do these times work, like, I love the calendar booking link, but then that could check your multiple calendars too, it seems.
And yeah, and I was wondering if you were speaking to that. So those types of platforms do offer the opportunity to feed in multiple calendars so it can cross-check. So if you have a chiropractic appointment, like I just got a crown put in my mouth, I had to have 2 hours, pull it out of my schedule to go to the dentist. And I also put in drive time. That's
Right,
another thing that you need to do on your calendar. So look, I went to the dentist yesterday for an 8 a.m. appointment. I figured it would take me until 9, so I put it from 8 to 9, and then I added another half-hour time slot for driving. Not that it takes me a half hour, but what if the appointment goes over? What if I, wanna grab a cup of coffee when I get back to the office? So that way there's room in
right.
my day for me to live
And
and
it's
breathe.
funny because it's like if you're in an outside sales role, your colleagues on the inside don't always have that perspective of, oh, Sarah might be driving. She can't take this meeting and screen share, and people
Right.
can't tell what we're doing. But if we're trying to make it as efficient as possible, that's a great tip.
And
And
if you work for a company, you can just put it in as, busy. I use the
oh,
word
yeah,
busy.
okay, that's good.
Just to segment it off the calendar, because people within an organization, people can see each other's calendars, so you just put the dentist in as busy time.
Okay, that's the personal stuff. Busy, I like that. Okay, any other examples before I move on to my next question?
I think that's enough to get people going for this week.
You did a good one. I know. Sorry. I was like, you guys don't have to re-listen to this, or the transcript will be available on my website. So if it's too much, I know we're talking pretty fast on a lot of different ideas, but I love it. One of the things that I would ask you in your experience, what are some of the most common challenges that sales teams face when they're adopting new technologies? That's part one. And then how can we overcome them is part two.
The answer to the first question is, what is the most common challenge? Is that new technology that's rolled out is built by people who don't actually use the product.
Ooh, mic drop. Yes.
It's built by people who do not use that tech and that application, that platform on a daily, day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
Plus, we're all human. We're going back to we are human. It's okay to be human. It's okay to have strengths, and that's fabulous. We all have different strengths. And it's okay to have weaknesses because we all have them. If you look at anybody in your office or in your life, you know what their weaknesses are. Trust me. Bored in a meeting, that's all you think about, right? So they're thinking the same about us. We all have our weaknesses. So you just have to figure out what your speed bump is to that technology. And you have to look and say, okay, fine. Some of the people I've trained, I'll go through and they say, well, I can't get logged in. I
Mhm.
mean, how can you use a piece of tech if you can't log in? So they had to go and talk to their IT department. It took a week of going back and forth in several different meetings. But as soon as they got logged in, they were fine. A simple problem, but they got it solved. I have another client that I work with that needed to import some contacts to her Salesforce. but her company has it so locked down that she's incapable of importing contacts to Salesforce. So now she has to take time to put in 200 contacts, keying them.
No, that
And
sucks.
I feel so bad for her that she has to do that, but that's just the way it is, So it's just so how do you work around it? The best way to work around it is if you're on your own, you're an individual sales rep, and you find somebody that knows tech and have them get on a screen share with you and show them what you're doing step by step. They'll be able to then see where the problem is and then help you iron out the problem. It doesn't need to be a tech department. It could just be a friend or a family member that's really good with tech. If you're a sales manager specifically, and you want to make sure that whatever the new tech platform is that is now being required, and you as a manager are being judged against whether people are using it or not, because that's a thing that happens. You have to make sure that you spend time individually with each sales rep and ask them to walk you through on screen share or in person. Screen share is better because it doesn't feel so micromanagey.
Mm, yeah.
So if you do a screen share, the person is driving their own computer without you over their shoulder. Plus, it's easier to coordinate a screen share than it is a live in person sometimes, and have them walk you through, this is what I do. This is how I log in. This is what, oh, wait, I had this question. I totally forgot I needed to ask you this. That's what normally happens.
Mm.
Is all of a sudden the questions will start coming out, and then you'll either be able to answer them as a sales manager or take them back to the powers that be and get the answer to that question. So it's really important. And that's why specifically I do individualized sales training. I've done seminar sales training. I've done speakerships. I've done all of that. I've attended a lot of that. But me personally, I find that the best way for sales enablement is to work individually to help the person get past their speed bump,
Mhm.
whatever their speed bump is.
You know what's so cool about that too, Karen, is it forces the leader to know the technology too. Because I think that's where some contentment can come from. It's like, oh, I'm being asked to do something that the boss doesn't understand or know how to do. So, like, that why seems to be a disconnect. I like the idea of having them watch you because that's where you find where you get stuck too. Like, doing is really what illuminates that. And then also one thing that I have been doing. So I liked your advice of just talking to a buddy. I have a couple of tech heavy friends that will help me. I just keep a running list, and it's literally like Brett technology help list is my list. And then whenever I come up on something, I'll just throw it in that file, and then I keep going. But then it really helps me knock out a lot of those speed bumps when I get a Brett on the call. So I think that
Yeah.
that's great. Another thing, let me ask you this. So I like the idea of the individualized thing. Have you ever seen a team do like a show and tell? Like, hey, we have this
Yeah,
CRM.
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I worked with a team last year, a new sales rep. He started out using HubSpot, and I transitioned them over to Salesforce because I'm a Salesforce baby. I'm not
Mhm.
saying one is better than the other. They have different capabilities, but if they wanted me to help them, which they did, then they needed to use Salesforce, so they did. And he's a young new sales rep, and he took to it like a duck to water, and he's delighted by it. And we fixed it up exactly the way he needed it to be fixed up, to be able to use it well. We got him past all the speed bumps. And now what he's doing is on Monday mornings when they have their sales meetings, he puts his screen up on the projector on the screen and goes through and explains, this is how you do this. And then
Cool.
he becomes, I essentially train the trainer, if you will.
Yeah.
So he then trains them, and then he becomes the person that they come and talk to when they have questions. Because he is one of them, it's easier to go to him than it is to go to IT, who may not understand how it's being used, or to the boss, who may never log into it.
Right. Oh, I love that idea. And then it gives him a little bit more ownership and something that he's comfortable with and opportunity to lead as a quote unquote individual contributor. That's a great
Yeah.
story. Can you share another case study or example where technology has significantly improved a client's performance or revenue?
Yeah, I have a couple of years ago, I had a client that asked me to work with one of their sales reps. He had been there for about 5 years or 4 years at that point, and he was doing okay. He was not a great sales rep, but once he got with the client, he was fantastic. There's hunter sales reps and farmer sales reps. I remember those words from a million years ago. Don't even know if they use those terms
I do.
anymore.
I'm a hunter. What are you?
Yeah. Well, he's a farmer,
Okay.
and farmers are absolutely necessary, and
Oh,
hunters are
yeah.
absolutely necessary. They're both
Agree.
necessary, and they both have value. And he's a really good farmer sales rep, and he was really good about tending to the clients. but he had all these technology problems. So I said, okay, fine, share your screen. That's my first thing I always do, share your screen. So got across the screen, I looked at it, and there was just something about it that I was sitting here watching him type out a response to an email. And he kept making certain errors. And I'm like, that's interesting because I know he's smart. I know he's capable. I know he knows how to spell that word. And I just asked him, are you dyslexic? And he said, yes, I am. I said, oh, we're stopping right here and we're changing everything. He was go Google dyslexic if you don't understand what it is, but it transposes letters and numbers in the brain. And so when you're looking at something, even though it's spelled correctly, it doesn't look like it's spelled correctly. And when it's spelled incorrectly, it looks like it's spelled correctly. So he would spend so much time agonizing to make sure that everything was actually spelled correctly because he didn't want anything to go out spelled incorrectly. So there's all this time being wasted. I said, no, we're not doing that anymore. So what we did is he was using his Salesforce app on his phone to do all of his notes. He had already started doing that for talk to text because it was so much easier for him to do it like that. And we don't care for notes if things are properly spelled or if, the talk to text gets it right or not, it's close enough, right? But for clients, I said, so what we need to do is we need to set up a series of email templates that you can use that you're just adding in certain things, not everything, which is a good practice in any event, but it really helps with somebody has something like dyslexia. The third thing we did was I said, let's see if there's an app for that, right? There's an app for everything. Let's see if there's an app for that. So while we're there in session, I Googled, is there a Chrome, because he uses Chrome, is there a Chrome app for talk to text? Sure enough, there was. It was $40 a year. We downloaded it, installed it. He started using it, transformed his sales. He made double income last year because his speed went up. His ability to increase his speed to market, his speed to reply. He has more time to call on more people because he's no longer hampered by, I wouldn't call dyslexia a weakness, but it was getting in the way of his sales.
Right.
And that's a very common problem. And when I talked to his boss, I said, oh, by the way, did you know so-and-so is dyslexic? He said, no. I said, but that kind of explains why such and such is slow. I said, yeah. I said, and that's another reason why it's really important to know individually each person on your team or for yourself, your sales, your strengths and weaknesses. Everything, there's an app for everything these days. Truly. It can be solved. Somebody solved it.
Let me ask you a question about that too. I love that story, by the way, and I'm happy to hear that he's just kicking it. As we're talking about all these things, if people are hearing us and they're like, oh, I need to figure that out. Oh, I should do that. Is it just a Google search? Like, how do people find the answer? YouTube?
Just a Google search or go on ChatGPT. It knows a lot too.
Oh yeah. I've been asking.
How do I solve for this? And it'll tell you, at least give you some ideas of some words to Google, if nothing else.
Yeah, I asked ChatGPT the other day how to replace a battery on an Apple AirTag, and it literally was like, turn it counterclockwise. Da, 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 da. I was like, wow, this is like way easier than going through YouTube videos.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's just a Google search. And sometimes you have to Google it a variety of ways or, and I personally use Google specifically. I find it provides more holistic results than the other search engines. So I have my little things I've sold my soul to. So
we're getting a little technology Karen avatar of your Microsoft, Salesforce, Google. Hey, it's okay though. I mean, if it works for you, it's almost like assemble your technology toolkit so you have your go-tos for things.
Right, exactly. And it's already all set up the way you need it to be. So that was a good example because it allowed him to increase his sales. He could close more leads. And more importantly, he was able to respond to people more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are studies that have been done that if you respond to somebody, I mean, just think of your own life. You're calling to see, a pest control company. If you call and have to leave a voicemail to 3 different companies and you don't get a live answer, well, that's a bummer. The live answer person, unless they sound stupid, is probably going to get the business because they answered and the other people didn't. But let's just say all 3 voicemails were left. If you have to wait, 15 minutes for one person, a day for another person, and a week for another person, who are you going to give the business to?
Yes. And it's funny too, because now everything is so AI heavy that I don't know about you, but it is like I use Squarespace for my website. And whenever I have to chat with them, they respond right away. And I know it's a real person. And they don't just point me to an article that I go read on my own. Like they'll tell me how to do it. And I am like building this weird loyalty to Squarespace because a real human talks to me versus like navigating through a bot. And I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to this show. There's a lot of people in positions where they can help make those decisions for their companies. And one easy way to differentiate ourselves is just being quick to reply like a human. Like, why wouldn't we do that?
Right. Yeah. No, you definitely want to do that. And let's see, do I have another example? When I work with new reps, like people who are new, brand new, like Gen Z,
Okay.
23, 22, 24, 25 year olds. One of the, and I'm going to state this as clearly as possible. One of the things that sales managers and business owners do is, oh, they're young. They know how to use technology. They don't. They do not know anything about business. They do not know anything about your business. They do not know anything about business technology. They know how to use Gmail or mail. They know how to use social media platforms that are based on personal back and forth interactions such as Instagram, TikTok, things of that nature. They absolutely know how to use all that. And they have a familiarity and they're not afraid of the tech, but they absolutely do not know how to use anything else.
Wow.
So, yeah, so therefore, and if they do, if they were trained in school, sometimes most of the time they have them work in Google Sheets and most of business works on Microsoft.
Right.
They work on both, but it's important to know that Google Sheets and Excel are similar, but not quite the same.
Or Canva versus PowerPoint. Like,
Correct.
businesses use PowerPoint.
Exactly. So you just have to understand that they're going to still have to, they may not be afraid of tech, but they still have to be trained on tech. So one of the things I like to train my new trainees, new salespeople, brand new salespeople, is I train them quickly how to use the CRM that's provided or go get their own. If one is not provided, I tell them to go sign up and use one on their own, whatever the lowest level
Mhm.
dollar amount is. $25 a month for Salesforce, free for HubSpot in some respects, or very low price for HubSpot in other respects. There's a lot of different programs out there, a lot of platforms out there, but manage your CRM. And
Mhm.
not because your company's making you do it, but manage it for yourself because that CRM will now become your brain. Things
Mhm.
are moving so fast because of technology, even faster now because of AI, that each salesperson needs to take responsibility for what they say they're going to do. And
Mhm.
it's too easy to forget from moment to moment. So if you use a CRM and you say, okay, I'll call you back next Wednesday, Mr. Smith, make sure to put it in the CRM as a flag, as an activity. So it'll tell you, you need to call Mr. Smith today.
That I think that that was an area and is an area that I really need to work on, how to maximize the CRM tools to take stuff off of my brain and make the CRM use it. That's a great answer. That's a great example.
Right. So it's just, you have to remember that the CRM is your brain.
Mm.
Just offload as much as you can, offload as much data as you can to that brain so that you're free to do the parts that you're strong with,
Yeah. And I think
right?
what's cool about that, Karen, is if you look at it that way, then it's not, oh, this is just another thing I have to do. Oh, I don't have to learn this. It's like, no, this is my brain. It's here to help me. And then I can focus on other stuff. Okay, that's a great reframe. I needed to hear it too.
Right.
Okay, awesome. So I want to also ask you if, let's say, a company rolls out a new piece of technology, or people are listening and they're like, oh, I want to go hit my speed bumps. I want to go fix some of the stuff Karen and Sarah are talking about. How can individuals integrate new technologies into their existing processes without disrupting their workflow? Or maybe a different way to say that is like, how can people find time to learn it and do it?
Yeah, that's actually a great question because so many people say, well, I just don't have time,
Hmm.
and and nobody has time. Truly, nobody has time. So I go back to what I said at the very beginning, start small. Just do one little thing, make one little change, set up a calendar link and add it into your signature and just see what happens and just let that sit there for a few weeks. And then do another thing. Maybe play with the dictation that's on the Microsoft Office. You can do it for Outlook and for Word. You can just do dictation,
Wow.
just things that are already on board, that are already available to us. You just want to make sure that you start with one small thing, find one small speed bump and just solve for that. And then just let a little time pass and then solve for the next one. Or
Okay.
if there's a new tech that's introduced, just use it a little bit, just get acclimated to it. You just have to be in the space. Anything that's new is difficult. When I was introduced to let me give you an example. When I was introduced to ChatGPT, it was March of 2023, right? I was behind the 8 ball. For somebody who does tech, I was behind the 8 ball by a few months. But I finally got there. By the time I was done with my flight home from the conference that I learned about it at, I had already figured out what lodge in Fairbanks, Alaska I wanted to go to this year to go see the Northern Lights. Okay.
Cool. Yeah.
It was kind of fun.
Yeah, that's a fun way to use it and learn it.
Yeah, just do it so it's fun and
Mhm.
it's personal and you're not trying to use it for business purpose. Make it interesting to you individually, to do something. And in addition to that, by July, I was training salespeople how to use it. I was doing a seminar. So I learned it in March and I was already doing a training seminar on it in July. And then I would get on the phone with the individual sales reps that I was working with and say, show me how you're using ChatGPT. And that's the reason why I do the individualized sales training, because I find that people learn a lot in seminars, but not all the information gets
Mm,
downloaded
yeah.
correctly. So working with somebody individually really helps. Okay, let's try it like this. And then we use it for one application that they need to use it for. Just find one thing to see if it'll save your time. And I personally had a hard time at the beginning finding ways to have ChatGPT help me.
Mhm.
I now leave it open on my browser and on my phone, and I'm in it 10, 15 times a day because I have figured out that it can do so much more than I thought it could. But I just did one little fun thing for myself. And then also just little by little started learning it.
Cool. I would ask it. I asked it for a pina colada recipe the other day, and it gave me a like cream de coconut or something I didn't have, obviously. And I just said, I don't have this ingredient. And then it just gave me a different version of the recipe. It's like, okay, this is pretty cool. But I've been obviously for my business, I've been using it quite a bit too. And I know we aren't spending time on AI, but I think it's a cool example of if you just take some time and chip away at it, now you start to see, oh, I know I can ask it this. Oh, I know I can do this. And I think I like your comment about there's an app for everything. There's a podcast episode for everything. Like information is
Oh, when I
really
train
out there.
salespeople, when I'm doing my seminars, I had this one thing where I needed to train people on manufacturing space. So I went and I found a podcast that's all about the manufacturing facility. I mean, who would have thought there was a podcast about that? But there's something for everything out there. And the
Yeah,
question I would ask at this point is, where do you start? You
right.
know, if you're not being given a piece of technology to work on, and you're just listening to this podcast and going, okay, I want to do something. I want to try this, where do I even start? I would just get honest about your weaknesses and figure out, okay, like for me, I can't fill out a form. Literally, I filled out a postal service form a couple of weeks ago to send something to Australia, and I clicked Austria. It was something that needed to get to Australia. It was like, oh my goodness, I'm just terrible. I mean, literally put me in front of a FedEx form and I break out in a cold sweat. But I can get behind a microphone, I can get in front of 1,000 people, you know, with being mic'd up and talking to them, absolutely no problem. Something that would make anybody just wanna run for the hills and hide to be in front of that many people speaking. I just love that. But you put me in front of a form,
Yeah, oh
can't do
yeah. You asked me to do math on the spot, and I'm like, "Ooh, cold." I don't know.
so just figure out what your weaknesses are and say, "Okay, I need to solve for this."
Okay, that's
And
good.
maybe use ChatGPT and say, "I have this weakness. What are some ways to solve to support that?" I mean, that'll tell you. Ask your friends. Everybody's got an opinion.
Yeah. And I think what's a good takeaway, Karen, for the listeners is like whatever question you have, a resource is out there for you. I think
Mhm.
that's something where it's like we can all take comfort in the fact that if we don't know how to do something, we will be able to figure it out. And the more and more you do it, the more you realize, oh yeah, this is not hard. I can figure this
Yeah, I
out.
was watching something about how they put the man on the moon or whatever, and I'm sitting there going, "How the heck did they do that with the technology they had at that time?" That's just amazing. I mean, it's almost miraculous if you ask me. And here we are with all of this technology around us, and we all have the ability to make transformations.
Yeah, I love that. I was watching a show and it was called Black Sails on Stars. It was just okay. But what the new pirate captain is about pirates. The new pirate captain it was designing his pirate flag for his ship. And I was like, huh, I wonder how they made pirate flags in 1770s Nassau. And the answer was they had extra sailcloth, dyed it black with tar, and then would use whitewash to paint the skull and crossbones. But like, how interesting. I don't know. So it is a
Well,
really
and that's a perfect example if you work with what you got.
Right, exactly. And I think it's funny too because like we're living in such a special unique time. And
Mhm.
so even though it can be really intimidating, it's also like amazing to witness this like huge human shift in technology. And I think the last, I know we talked a lot about how technology can enhance rather than replace the human element of sales, but I want to give you that as our final question, Karen. Like, how can we make sure as we're using all this tech and making ourselves more efficient, easier, how can we keep like the human parts of ourselves?
Well, we're gonna go back to that where I started with the human resources. We are a human resource and we have strengths and weaknesses. Continue to say that. And sales is truly all about know, like, and trust.
Mm,
You and I can both tell when we're getting an AI message.
for sure.
Everybody listening to this podcast knows exactly when they're getting an AI message. Absolutely 100%. If I can use technology to free up my time, then that means I have more time to personally connect with people, which is all about sales enablement, right? Just getting you down the road, getting right down that road faster. It allows using technology to save you time, creates an opportunity for people to know, like, and trust you because you have time for them. And that's the one thing that is so precious in this world today is that nobody has time. And if we can make time for a client, then they're going to or a prospect, they're going to feel that. They're not gonna feel like you're rushing to move on to the next thing and
That's
that you're just a number to them.
I love that, Karen. I thought that was so beautifully put. Thank you for sharing that insight. And thank you for all of the technology wisdom you just dropped on us. Like, I'm already going to go change a couple things after this interview wraps up. But before we close, I want to ask you two things. The first is anything else we didn't mention that you want to leave the audience with?
If you lead a sales team, get honest with yourself about your own strengths and weaknesses and that of each of your salespeople. And don't hold their weaknesses against them, figure out a way to support them. If you're an individual salesperson listening to this podcast, continue the process of self-education. I'd like to really focus on that. And if you find that you don't have time to do anything, find a way to have somebody help you make the time.
Awesome. Okay. And where can people find you if they want to connect or learn more?
Best place to find me is on LinkedIn, Karen Gunther, SVM. So it's the linkedin.com/Karen Gunther, SVM.
I will link it in our show notes as well.
Yes. It's the
Mhm.
best place to find me. I post all sorts of great tech tips on there, and I have all my information on there as well.
I follow Karen. We are LinkedIn buddies, connections. We've never met in person yet, but it's going to happen. And because we've had more free time in our hands to build this relationship because we leverage technology. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom, Karen.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Really appreciate the opportunity.